Today, I'm going to show you 4 key tips on how to improve your suspense writing. And I'm going to show, not tell, using examples. So let's get started. So this is a bad one. This is pretty telly. It's a little flat. We're already spoiling the tension because we're building up that there's this message, but right away we resolve it. And that's not going to interest a reader. And to some degree, the writing, it's a little emotionally distant. You don't really feel like you're in her shoes. It feels like you're being summarized what's happening. And as a reader, it pulls you away. You don't necessarily care or relate to Susan or what's happening. So let's try to fix that. How about Susan stepped into her room and froze? And let's add a little color to this. A green slip of paper lay on her desk, just like the last one. Now, why I'm putting a little bit more detail in the note. So imagine someone zeroing into that, and they're going to see detail that maybe someone else wouldn't just see. And now we're going to give her a physical reaction. Her stomach twisted. Let's add a little psychological suspense here. So why don't we add this? Not again, not from him. So you can see I'm not explicitly stating anything about the stalker, but I'm implying that there's a note from someone that scares her. And again, that last line, dad calling, I'm not even going to touch that. I'm going to get rid of that. If I was writing a book with multiple characters, I might jump into the next character's perspective in the next chapter. So the reader's kind of left on this little hook, and it would actually help pull the reader in and help them be more invested in what's happening. So another great tool here is to hide something in plain sight. So that means one character may spot a detail or something about another, and it kind of builds that tension, and the reader sees it, and yet maybe the main character doesn't quite know why or understand its significance, but the reader can grasp it almost immediately. And then the reader's going, oh no, don't go in that room, or something like that. Like that can actually build a lot of tension in your writing. So here, let's focus on a bad example first and why it's bad. Why this doesn't work, well, one, I'm making it very clear and obvious to the reader. It was blood. And do we really need to be that obvious? And again, I'm telling, I'm not showing. The emotion from this character is very flat. If you see potentially, or what you suspect is blood under the fingernails, the author is really just summarizing her actions. They're not actually getting to the head of that character about why that could be so bothersome. What impact would have seeing potential blood on someone's fingernails? How would that affect them personally? And if you can show that, then the reader's going to feel that, and they're going to feel the suspense because of it. So let's try to fix this. So I do like the start too. I think that's pretty good. He brought her coffee, like always, black, no sugar. Diving into the rest, which is a little telly. How about her smile froze? Now, obviously, when that happens, they're shocked by seeing something. And then again, because she's zeroing in on that detail, well, we can add some extra detail to that piece. So we don't have to just state it's blood. We can imply it. And that's pretty good, but let's maybe add a little bit more tension. And let's put it back to build on that. She suspects he knows she's seen it. And then the character wondering, what is that? Is that motor oil? Is it blood? Is it something else? And then also knowing that the man who has that under his nails is watching you figure that out. And that's where the suspense comes in. You don't have to tell the reader everything that's going on and summarizing it. You can use these little details and actions and behaviors to convey those emotions instead of just outright stating it. So then it starts building in those clues for the reader to start figuring out the mystery. Now, is he bad? Has he done something terrible? What's a dynamic between these two? And that's the great way you can actually use any one of these techniques even to build suspense. Another way is using the ticking clock method, and that's pretty self-explanatory. So let's go in through an example. So this is the bad example. Now, why that's so bad is one, we're just expressly stating her emotions or feelings. She's desperate and frightened. We don't get a sense of urgency out of that. Sure, we're setting up the situation and telling the reader about it, but we want the reader to feel it. So how about this? She had to find the money or they'd take her boys. Her eyes locked on the time. Okay, so this is where we get that sense of urgency. Now or never. Why this improves on the previous example is instead of describing she's desperate and frightened, put her right into the moment. She had to find the money. The urgency's there, or they would take her boys. So we know what the consequence is. Then we add a physical element, her eyes locked on the time. So the reader can picture that. They can feel like they're there, then now or never. Now that's a very punchy sentence, and adding these kind of raw emotional words, you can actually build that sense of suspense relatively easily. That's a key tip here. Pace controls suspense. So when the action heats up, tighten up your prose and writing and have very short, punchy sentences to build it up. Now, you're not going to do that for extended chapters, but when you really want to add the tension, this is a great technique. This is very telly. We're actually telling the reader that she's scared. It also jumps between the two characters, and it's a little disjointed. You don't know who to focus on here, the man in the shadows or Susan walking to her car. And even though the dialogue feels generic, it's still okay. Who are you? But do we even need that dialogue to build suspense? Why don't we try to put the reader in the moment along with the character? I'm trying to use sensory details, so mostly auditory, footsteps echoed. And then instead of just explicitly stating her emotion that she is scared, I'm using this last sentence as a way to show emotion through action. So she turned and her keys slipped through her fingers. So you could tell that she faced some sort of shock and she was no longer in the moment of walking to her car happy. She was now terrified that there's a man in the shadows. So without me at all saying anywhere that she's scared or terrified, by having more showy sentences, building the pace, and then showing emotion through action, you can actually build that suspense and make it that much more exciting. Now, of course, you won't be focused on just one technique throughout your book. You're going to use these and many more to build that suspense in your novel. These particular tips are only 4. I have a lot more I can share, but hopefully by showing and not explaining to you through these examples, you can actually improve your suspense writing today. So if you like these videos, click like and subscribe. Happy writing.